Ethical leadership and integrity were the focal points as interviews kicked off for the next commissioner of the Independent Electoral Commission. Current IEC chairperson Glen Mashinini is one of the 12 candidates interviewed for the position. Mashinini's term ends on the 16th this month. We're joined now by Professor Barney Pityana from the Academy of Science South for more insights on that one. Prof, thank you so much for your time this morning. Certainly is going to be a very interesting time for the 12 candidates that are looking to perhaps, hold the seat of the IEC Commissioner. But it's not just a seat that comes with, some kind of glory. It's a seat that comes with a wealth of responsibility and also account in terms of even how our electoral system works in the country. Just speak to us a little bit about the significance of actually taking up that position.
Thank you very much, Faith. Thank you to your listeners. And Ramadan Mubarak to all the people who observe the holy month, of course, like you have already started. But the important thing that we must, I think, emphasize is that the integrity and the trust in the Electoral Commission have continued to go down since 2009, I think. There could be all manner of reasons for that, but it is important that we try to kind of uplift the integrity and the respect and the trust that the ordinary voter has for the Commission. I think, for one, to start with, the chairpersonship of Chief Justice Zondo is crucial and very important. He brings with him a great amount of integrity and a great deal of authority. And I believe that South Africans in general will welcome Chief Justice Zondo's chairing of the Commission. And of course, the Chapter 9 institutions are also others who are participating in the shortlisting. And there is a question mark about that, because very, very often members of the Chapter 9 institutions are inclined to be approachable to political parties as to who should become a member of the IEC. In reality, the political parties ought not to have any kind of involvement or interest even in who becomes a member of the Electoral Commission. Because whoever is a member of the Electoral Commission has to be a very independent-minded person with integrity and ethics. And it has to be the person who can be trusted by the ordinary voters with their vote, and who can find a way of working with political parties, all political parties. And now that we are in a new dispensation with independent candidates as well, and to be trusted by all of them. Now, if you get a situation where political parties are vying for certain candidates, are lobbying for certain candidates, you really make that a relationship of trust very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And I would really urge that political parties keep out of this process and not politicize it, because by so doing, they are undermining the very quality and integrity of the Commission that they need for their own political profiles.
Yeah, I just want to labor on the point that you're making here, Prof, because even when we were looking at the local government elections last year, where we saw that there was a significant amount of even discontentment around how even political parties themselves were citing that there was almost preferential treatment, right, for the ruling party. And then when you saw subsequent to that, in terms of just the unfolding of how certain votes were actually happening, it was questions around what do observer missions do in this country. It was questions around ballot papers, certain ballot papers being found, ballot boxes being found in dustbins. So it goes into, again, the question around, is actually the Commission there to uphold the integrity of the democracy of this country as well as the electoral system of this country? Because once that is brought into question, then we start looking at whether or not this democracy of ours is actually free and fair.
Exactly, exactly. And they are there, the commission must ultimately determine whether the elections were free and fair. In a sense, the Act allows them to judge themselves as to whether the elections were free and fair. But if right at the beginning there are candidates for this party, there are candidates for that party, there are candidates with the support of this other party, it makes that very, very difficult to trust the commission when it says that the elections were free and fair.
Just in terms of the president as well having the final decision, I know that it's the selection now, the interviewing process of the 12 candidates, and then the 8 candidates will then be presented before the Portfolio Committee of Home Affairs, and then the final word rests with the president. Certainly, once again, the president having a role and a wealth of responsibility in being able to decide who really stands for the electoral process of this country. What kind of considerations should the president actually make, in your opinion, Prof, regarding the right person to take up that mental piece and actually be responsible for the electoral system of South Africa?
The Deputy Chief Justice, Tukang Moseneke, has made the point correctly, that actually we have put so much responsibility and so much trust in the president in this country, as if Nelson Mandela was going to be the president forever. And lo and behold, different kinds of people have become president since then. But because it is very, very critical that the president does not present his or her own candidate, does not represent his or her own political parties or political interests in the Electoral Commission, but is really looking for competence, for integrity, for experience. People also who can be trusted across the board. You know, you may not be aware that I presided when I participated when the former Chief Justice Arthur Chaskoson was Chief Justice and chaired the first Electoral Commission. He emphasized again and again to those who were coming before us the importance of integrity and the importance of their independence, and that they are not there to represent anybody, but they are there to represent the Constitution and what the constitutional dispensation actually required of our electoral system. And that, I think, and I really do pray, that it continues to be emphasized to all the candidates, that they actually don't represent themselves, they don't represent their party or interests, they are there to implement the Constitution and what it stands for.
How can the IEC then, Prof, in your opinion, gain the trust of South Africans back? Because if you were mentioning that there's a trust deficit that exists between the South African voter as well as the IEC, that's going to say a lot and point a lot towards 2024 and how many people actually participate in the voting system and in the voting process. If South Africans don't trust the process, I don't know how many of them are going to be willing to wake up in the morning and show up at those voting stations and cast their X on the ballot paper. How then does the IEC restore that trust back and the faith back into the citizens of this country that indeed your vote truly counts?
Very, very important, Faith. You know, I think the first thing that needs to happen is that the development that has crept up, I think, in recent years of members of the staff of the Commission without any cooling off period, then becoming commissioners as well. The difficulty with that is that members of the staff form relationships with political parties, form relationships of trust with political parties. And then they become commissioners. They can now be expected to be independent when, in fact, as members who were managing the process, and many of them with a certain degree of relationship with certain political parties. I think personally, the first thing that has to go is that nobody who has been on the staff of the IEC, who without a cooling off period, then becomes a commissioner. That's the first thing. The second thing is very important to discriminate the difference between the management of the elections and the electoral process and the oversight that the commission actually gives. In other words, management and the commission has got to be clearly defined, as I think the Act intended it to be. But in recent years, that has actually disappeared for a variety of reasons. I think the third thing and the last thing that I'll bring is to say that really, as far as I'm concerned, the president has a responsibility not just out of his or her own interests, but to really give effect to what the Constitution actually says. And the president knows this because that's what the former Chief Justice Mokweng laid out very, very clearly, and he knows this. And members of parliament, by the way, don't necessarily know this. They don't believe in this, for far too many of them. Political parties, as far as I can see right now, don't believe this. So the lobbying is intensive, is fever pitch. And they ought not to be lobbying. Political parties ought not to lobby for certain candidates. Political parties ought not to get involved in who becomes a candidate for the Electoral Commission. They get involved anyway when they actually recommend to the president who the candidates would be, whom the president should consider. I trust the current president, though, that he will apply his mind in as impartial and in a manner of integrity to really give effect to what the nominations of Chief Justice Zondo have brought forward.
Professor Barney, we'll leave it there for this morning. Thank you very much for your time. Professor Barney Pityana, they're just giving us his take in terms of who should be at the seat of the next IEC commissioner. Those interviews are currently underway, 12 candidates, and then it's going to be minimized to 8 candidates. And then, of course, that final word lies with the President of the Republic of South Africa.